Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna keep watching Napoleon's Marshals. This is part 4. And this is Bessières, Macdonald and Masséna. Okay, interesting. I know Masséna and I've seen Macdonald and I've heard of Bessières, right? So we're starting to get up there with those more famous. I don't know if they're militarily better than the ones we have had before, but in their list, and they had some French military, I don't know if they were generals or historians, help them come up with the list. Original videos down below. Let's go.
Terror belli, decus pacis. Terror in war, ornament in peace. The words inscribed on every French marshal's baton. So far, we've met Marshals Perignon, Brune, Serrurier, Kellerman, Grouchy, Moncey, Poniatowski, Jourdan, Bernadotte, Augereau, Lefebvre, Mortier, Marmont, Saint-Cyr, Oudinot, Victor and Murat.
Alright, so far on this list, I think my favorite one has been, Mortier, Oudinot, Poniatowski and Murat. I think those 4 has been so far the best ones for me, because if I remember right, Mortier, not Marmont, Mortier was the soldier, right? Oudinot was also a soldier. Murat is a soldier, but also very flamboyant and crazy. Poniatowski is the only non-French one, and that's pretty cool that he came up there. So you know. Alright.
9.
Okay.
Marshal Bessières.
I mean, I would argue there's a couple who also, if they was at Waterloo, maybe Napoleon would have won Waterloo, but again, at the time, the context of when Waterloo happened, he was totally surrounded. So, I don't know, but obviously Napoleon expected to get either not a peace term, but an armistice sort of, right? Ceasefire or something like he got before, but you know. But if I had Bessières with me at Waterloo, my guard would have brought me victory. So I think he's talking about the center, right? He's the old guard who charged in the center, right? Who were mown down by cannon fire and by the Brits, Belgium, Portuguese troops on the reverse slope, right? Who stood up and shot. And some of the guards were then later on forced to be in squares because cavalry came out, and a lot of them were mown down, sort of executed, but not really. It's in the heat of battle, but by cannon fire, right?
Jean-Baptiste Bessières was the son of a surgeon with a relatively prosperous upbringing in southwestern France. When the French Revolution began, he volunteered for the National Guard and was sent to Paris to join the King's Constitutional Guard, along with his old school friend Joachim Murat. This unit was soon disbanded, but Bessières remained in Paris and was among the soldiers defending the Tuileries Palace when it was stormed by the mob on the 10th of...
Right, because the National Guards, that one that he was at, sounded like the compromise that the king did, right? So he entrusted sort of the revolutionaries, not the extreme, not the mob, but the revolutionaries, right? To have their own soldiers under his protection. Or, him under their protection, right? And then the mob obviously stormed in. And they were almost killed.
Of August 1792. In the aftermath, he needed to get out of Paris in a hurry, so he volunteered to fight on the Pyrenees front. His bravery and good sense won him a commission in the 22nd Chasseurs, and he distinguished himself at the Battle of Boulou.
I would think that the reason why he wanted to get out of there, because in the center of the country, not on the battlefield, not on the front, there's a lot of political battles that you just can't keep up with, right? So you just go to the front and there's not that much politics. It's you against your opponents, and that's it. Even though in the French army there, probably a lot of them were royalists, a lot of them were probably revolutionaries, but again, they fought for France. So, you know.
Transferred to Italy, his friendship with Murat got him noticed by the army commander, General Bonaparte, who was impressed enough to make him commander of his new bodyguard, known as Les Guides de Bonaparte. Bessières distinguished himself as a cavalry commander in Italy, and later Egypt, winning promotion to brigadier and loyally supporting Napoleon at every turn. He became one of the few men that Napoleon regarded as a true friend.
Not many.
When Napoleon became first consul of France in 1799, he rewarded Bessières with command of the elite Consular Guard cavalry, which he led with devastating effect at Marengo the next year.
Wow.
In 1804, Bessières became a Marshal, less for any great military achievement than for being a loyal member of Napoleon's inner circle. Bessières himself was well-liked, kind, well-mannered and generous, a pious Catholic and social conservative who liked to powder his hair in the old style.
I mean, he seems like the man who is sort of the middle ground, right? But he doesn't force himself on anybody else's beliefs, it seems to me, right?
His young wife,
good friend
Marie-Jeanne, was also a favorite at court, doted on by Napoleon and Empress Josephine. In 1805, Bessières commanded the Imperial Guard. In December that year, at the Battle of Austerlitz, he played a crucial role repelling the Russian Guard at the battle's climax. At Eylau in 1807, his squadrons supported Murat's mass cavalry charge and made their own disciplined attacks to cover his withdrawal. However, Bessières' opportunities for glory were limited. Napoleon always held the Guard back as his last reserve, as at Friedland.
Sense. I mean, the reason why Napoleon holds back his Imperial Guard makes sense, because I think it was either at Wagram or when he was at Borodino in Russia, he said, and when I've used the Imperial Guard, who is then going to fight the battle the next day, or who's going to be the flank or the rear or the front, the vanguard, right? But also Napoleon misses the opportunity to really crush his enemy here.
In 1808, Bessières received his first major independent command in northern Spain. That May, the country erupted in revolt against the French. Bessières reacted quickly and decisively, securing key towns and roads. He then attacked Spanish forces at Medina de Rioseco, winning a crushing victory against an enemy that outnumbered him 2-1. But once the immediate crisis had passed, he hesitated and failed to exploit his victory. When Napoleon arrived in Spain, Bessières was given command of the reserve cavalry, a role he retained for the war against Austria in 1809.
Maybe because of his non-aggression, right? He doesn't take risks, it seems like. Although he does at the same time, but maybe not after the fact, right? So like when he defeated the Spanish there, he didn't take the risk of going forward again. But, you know.
In May, Bessières and his cavalry were among the first across the Danube, with Masséna occupying the village of Aspern on his left and Lannes holding Essling on the right. When the Austrian commander, Archduke Charles, launched a massive and unexpected counterattack, Bessières, outnumbered 4-1, made a series of desperate charges, helping to save the army from disaster.
Wow.
It came at a high cost.
Yep.
Bessières and his
cavalry
performed bravely. But that night, a long-running feud with Marshal Lannes nearly came to blows when Lannes accused Bessières of hanging back. The matter went no further, as Lannes was fatally wounded the next day.
Bessières killed him.
Commanded the cavalry again at Wagram, leading a major attack to cover Masséna's redeployment to the left wing. As the charge began,
this one I remember.
A cannonball killed Bessières' horse and injured his leg.
Wow.
A rumour reached the Imperial Guard that Bessières was dead. Some old veterans began to weep for their old commander, until they were assured he was only wounded. That was quite a cannonball, Napoleon told Bessières. It reduced my guard to tears. As a devout Catholic, Bessières was critical of Napoleon's divorce from Empress Josephine, leading to a short spell out of favour.
I mean, that's fair enough. He stands for his standards, right? Or he stands for what he believes in, right? That's fair enough.
In 1811, he was sent back to Spain to command the Army of the North. He found an impossible situation: a widespread insurgency and insufficient troops and supplies. He wrote bluntly to Napoleon, stating that the French must give up territory, something the Emperor would never allow. For all his piety and refined manners, Bessières ordered his share of executions and reprisals in his attempt to pacify northern Spain, brutal methods used by many French commanders in this conflict. Later that year, he joined forces with Marshal Masséna's Army of Portugal to take on Wellington's army at the Battle of Fuentes de Oñoro, but was widely blamed for refusing to send in his cavalry to support Masséna's attacks. Unfortunately for Napoleon, this was typical of how many marshals behaved in his absence. They'd rather watch another marshal fail than help them to win all the glory.
Which but that makes sense on the surface why you would think that way, because you might want to be the only one in Napoleon's ear or whatever, have the most prestige, whatever. But again, how can you not see how blinding that is? Or, I mean, that is blinding. That's probably why they're thinking that way, right? And obviously we are thinking of it 200 years after the fact, almost more, right? So, you know, okay.
In 1812, Bessières accompanied Napoleon into Russia, commanding his Guard cavalry. Since the Guard was kept in reserve, he saw little action until the retreat, when he led the advance guard, clearing a path for the survivors.
Look at that.
The disaster in Russia left Bessières severely demoralized, but he was resolved to do his duty, now serving once more as Napoleon's cavalry commander in Marshal Murat's absence. On the 1st of May 1813, Bessières was scouting enemy positions before the Battle of Lützen, when a cannonball hit him in the chest, killing him instantly.
Wow.
His death robbed Napoleon of a dependable commander and one of his last remaining friends.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It is surely a great loss for you and your children, Napoleon wrote to his widow, but an even greater one for me. 8.
Sad.
Marshal Macdonald.
Really? Good and brave, but unlucky. Which luck has some part in warfare. Although you can't... You can't, like, grasp what luck is in warfare, but there is a part of it, right? But also, Macdonald is not a very French last name, so I'm thinking he might be Scottish, right? Maybe his parents, father, mother, from Scotland, perhaps. Maybe he's born there and... Nah, I think his father or something. I don't know. Leave a comment if you know.
Jacques Macdonald's father was a Scotsman who'd supported Bonnie Prince Charlie's bid to seize the British throne in 1745. After this ended in defeat at Culloden, the family fled to France. Inspired by tales of the Trojan War, Macdonald chose a military life and became a lieutenant in Dillon's Irish Regiment, a French unit made up mostly of Irish émigrés.
Which makes sense because they're fleeing persecution by... I mean, they're fleeing persecution, but also they're considered rebels because they want to instill or have the rightful heir to the British crown, right? Which they can't have a Catholic. I don't know if they've changed it now, but they can't have a Catholic as leader because the leader of the Church of England, which is a Protestant church, is the king or queen of the country. So having a Catholic as leader, that's pretty weird. But that makes sense.
In the Revolutionary
pretty cool though.
Wars,
It's like a what's it called? It's like French Foreign Legion, right? Irish regiment, right?
Reputation
cool.
as a hard-working, intelligent and brave officer, and served as aide-de-camp to General Dumouriez, commanding the Army
Never
of
heard
the
of
North. He distinguished himself in that general's famous victory at Jemappes, paving the way for rapid promotion from lieutenant to general in just 2 years.
Amazing.
He led his division well during campaigns in Holland and Germany, and formed a close bond with one of France's most successful commanders of this period, General Moreau.
Okay.
In 1798, he was sent to
Don't know
Rome
much about
as
him.
governor, and later commanded the army of Naples. Summoned north the following year to reinforce Moreau's army of Italy, he was nearly killed in a skirmish with Austrian cavalry. And while...
So I'm guessing... Or no, wait, maybe I'm getting mixed up here. When does Moreau become commander of the army of Italy? Is it after or before Napoleon? I think it's after. Yeah, it has to be after because he has Piedmont. Yeah.
His army was defeated at the Trebia by a larger coalition force commanded by the great Russian general Suvorov. But Macdonald's own conduct won approval from General Bonaparte, among others. Later that year, he assisted Napoleon's seizure of power in the coup of 18 Brumaire, ensuring the loyalty of the troops at Versailles. He was rewarded with an army command in Switzerland, and that winter led his men through the Alps to attack the Austrians in Italy.
Wow.
His march was far more challenging and dangerous than Napoleon's, but was never immortalized in quite the same way.
But again, though, I mean, both are bad, but Napoleon had maybe a larger force, probably, than Macdonald, but Macdonald maybe went a more dangerous route with less troops. I don't know. That's probably it, but you know.
In 1804, Macdonald's former commander, General Moreau, was arrested and charged with involvement in a plot to assassinate Napoleon. Macdonald stood up for his friend's reputation, an act of loyalty typical of the man, but disastrous for his career. Moreau was exiled. Macdonald was placed under police surveillance and retired to his country estate in disgrace. 5 years passed before Napoleon, desperate for experienced senior commanders, asked him to serve as military advisor to his 27-year-old stepson, Prince Eugène, now commanding the army of Italy. Macdonald and Eugène worked well together, driving back the Austrians, and by an awesome feat of marching, joined Napoleon near Vienna in time for the Battle of Wagram. The second day of the battle was Macdonald's moment. Entrusted by the Emperor with the main attack on the enemy centre, he formed his troops into a giant, open-backed square and advanced into a hail of fire. Napoleon, watching through his telescope, exclaimed several times, "What a brave man! What a brave man!" Macdonald's costly attack helped to secure a great victory. The next day, Napoleon went to find him on the battlefield and greeted him with the words, "Let us be friends from now. You have acted valiantly and given me the greatest services. On the battlefield of your glory, where I owe you so large a part of yesterday's success, I make you a Marshal of France. You have long deserved it." In
That's
addition,
cool.
Macdonald received the title Duke of Taranto and a large pension. But as time would prove,
For
his
France,
loyalty
yep.
remained to France, not to
Yep.
Napoleon.
Which I actually think is one of the reasons why Napoleon respected him, actually, right? Because I don't think in the battle he fought for Napoleon, he fought for the men, he fought for France. Which I think Napoleon saw that, but also as time goes on and Napoleon is a little more shaken in his boots if he's going to stay in power, then the people who are for France and not particularly maybe for him, he's going to question their loyalty, right?
Macdonald spent an unhappy year in Catalonia, commanding troops in what he regarded as an immoral war. In his memoirs, he even praised the noble and courageous resistance of the Spanish.
Yeah, exactly, and that's fair enough, because they're fighting for Spain and he's fighting for France. And again, the Spanish were allies of the French, so he maybe saw that.
In 1812, he was given command of 10th Corps for the invasion of Russia. This corps, composed of German troops and reluctant Prussian allies, guarded the left flank of the invasion and had a relatively quiet campaign. In December, the Prussians suddenly agreed an armistice with the Russians, leaving the loyal remnants of Macdonald's corps to fight their way back to Poland.
Wow.
By 1813, Napoleon relied on Macdonald as one of his senior marshals.
Makes sense.
In August, he gave him command of the forces keeping watch on General Blücher's army of Silesia. But when Macdonald advanced across the Katzbach River, torrential rain and flooding caused chaos among his troops, just as they encountered Blücher's army. Blücher launched an immediate attack, and Macdonald's army was routed. Thousands of his new conscripts surrendered or deserted.
Makes sense, they're
were driven
conscripts.
into the river itself.
Wow,
Macdonald
like
took
Austerlitz.
full responsibility for the disaster, though his lack of cavalry and some bad luck were also to blame. Napoleon certainly continued to respect Macdonald's military judgment. He continued to command 11th Corps and was in the thick of the fighting at Leipzig 2 months later. Macdonald was with the rear guard when the French retreat began and was shocked to see the chaos that engulfed the army. When the Elster Bridge was blown too early, he himself was trapped on the wrong side of the river and just managed to swim to safety under enemy fire. Macdonald continued to serve Napoleon as a loyal and reliable commander throughout the 1814 campaign, effectively serving as his deputy at several key moments. Unlike most marshals, Macdonald was never under Napoleon's spell and always spoke his mind to the emperor. This in itself was a valuable service, though it sometimes led to heated arguments. Perhaps inevitably, in April, it was Macdonald and Ney who took the lead in confronting Napoleon with the facts of his situation. The war was lost, and he must abdicate.
Think of those two people, Macdonald and Ney. Ney, more of a friend, very much loyal to Napoleon. And Macdonald more loyal to France and can see where the wind is shifting, but he's not this sly guy, right? And it's good to have them both, because Ney wants probably to save Napoleon and his family and all that, and what he has accomplished from a loyalty standpoint. And Macdonald can see it from the French standpoint, right? Can't keep on doing this war and all that, but still both respect Napoleon. That's
Napoleon named Macdonald as one of the 3 men who would negotiate with the Allies, telling his foreign minister, the Marquis de Caulaincourt, "Macdonald does not like me, but he is a man of his word, of high principles, and he can be relied on."
Exactly.
In their last meeting, a few days later, Napoleon told Macdonald, "I did not know you well. I was prejudiced against you. I have done so much for so many others who have abandoned me. And you, who owe me nothing, have remained faithful. I appreciate your loyalty. Too late."
Wow, I just got goosebumps.
Macdonald was kept on as a military advisor by France's restored Bourbon monarchy. He continued to speak his mind, so much so that Louis XVIII nicknamed him his outspokenness. During the 100 Days, Macdonald remained loyal to the king and attempted to rally troops to fight against Napoleon. When he saw this was futile, he escorted the king to safety in Belgium, then returned to Paris, where he refused to meet with Napoleon. After the defeat at Waterloo, he was put in charge of demobilizing the last elements of Napoleon's Grande Armée, and helped many officers to escape arrest by the Bourbons.
Which makes sense, because Macdonald is for France, for the soldiers, for the people, right? Not political persecution or whatever persecution, right? He stands on his principles and morals. That's good.
Macdonald was a methodical, reliable, if unspectacular commander.
Yep.
But he distinguished himself above all by his lack of vanity or personal ambition, his complete loyalty to France, and his willingness to speak his mind, virtues that were all too rare among Napoleon's marshals. 7. Marshal Masséna.
He came alive when surrounded by danger. When defeated, he was always ready to begin again, as if he was in fact the victor. That's a guy you want to have on your team, right? No matter what, he's going to keep pushing on, although that could be a detriment, right? It could bring you down together.
André Masséna was born in Nice, at that time not technically part of France, but of the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. His father, a shopkeeper, died when he was young, so he ran away to sea. Then at 17, enlisted in the French army. He was quickly made a sergeant, but a commoner could rise no higher in the Royal Army, so after 14 years' service, he quit.
I mean, a lot what you see with these marshals, a lot of them are actually lower class or middle class, right? So few of them are these aristocrats, right? Or they don't care about their aristocratic families or father or mother or whatever, right? Which is admirable. But it also shows that the revolution made it so the lower and middle class could rise up the ranks. Especially in the military. Now, you can think of this. Why so much in the military did they want people to be able to rise in the ranks? Obviously of merit. But also they needed more people to lead. Right? Because they were completely surrounded. Right?
When the French Revolution began, he re-enlisted in a local volunteer battalion. Masséna, supremely self-confident and unfazed by any challenge, was elected to command the battalion and led it with success against the Austrians on the Piedmontese front. Despite his lack of education, he proved an instinctive combat leader. He was soon promoted to brigadier, and after leading a successful attack at the Siege of Toulon, was made General of Division. He won an impressive victory over the Austrians at Loarno in 1795, and when the Army of Italy's commander, General Scherer, resigned over lack of support from the government in Paris, many expected Masséna to replace him.
I mean, Napoleon could have done the same when he was commander of Army of Italy, right? He had some support from the government, although they were more focused on the German fronts, right?
Instead, the job went to the 26-year-old General Bonaparte, 11 years younger and much less experienced than Masséna, but with far better political connections. Nevertheless, Napoleon and Masséna worked together brilliantly. Masséna commanded his advance guard and played a major role in several of his early victories. In reports, Napoleon described Masséna as active, tireless, audacious. He won so many battles that Napoleon acclaimed him l'enfant gâté de la victoire, the spoiled child of victory.
Spoiled.
Masséna was, however, notorious for extorting vast sums from the local Italians, often while his own troops went hungry and without pay. In 1798, Masséna received his first independent command, the Army of Switzerland. The next spring, after French defeats on the Rhine and in Italy, responsibility for the defense of France lay in his hands. Rather than wait to be encircled, he attacked and won a brilliant victory over Austrian and Russian forces at the Battle of Zurich.
Okay. He doesn't let the enemy decide the battlefield, right? The terms of the battle, which is something good to have as a leader or to have as a commander under you, right? Okay.
Rewarded with command of the Army of Italy, Masséna led a heroic defense of Genoa in 1800. He was eventually starved into surrender, but his stubborn defense bought Napoleon enough time to cross the Alps and defeat the Austrians at Marengo. Physically exhausted by this last ordeal and surrounded by accusations of corruption, Masséna was recalled to Paris and went into semi-retirement. When he was made a Marshal by Napoleon in 1804, he seemed distinctly underwhelmed, and on being congratulated, remarked, "There are 14 of us."
Wow.
Masséna was one of the few marshals who'd proved themselves in independent command, making him a priceless asset to Napoleon.
That's true.
In 1805, he was recalled to active service and given command of the Army of Italy in the war against the Third Coalition. Masséna kept Archduke Charles's army busy in Italy, while the Emperor won his great victories at Ulm and Austerlitz. In 1806, Masséna oversaw the occupation of the Kingdom of Naples, ordering brutal reprisals against local resistance. In 1807, he commanded 5th Corps in Poland, but his role covering Warsaw meant he missed the major battles of Eylau and Friedland. Later that year, while out hunting with the Emperor and his entourage at Fontainebleau, he was accidentally shot in the face and lost the use of an eye. Napoleon, a notoriously bad shot, was to blame.
I mean, look at this. Look at this. This is how they hunted. Obviously, this is a more, not a public hunt, but look at this. How is this hunting? How many dogs do they have? And how do you know if Napoleon has a bad aim? How do you not hit a dog? Maybe this painting exaggerates it, but I mean, look at this. How is this hunting? This is hunting for the sake of hunting, right? Or actually it's not, because they're not actually hunting. They just trapped an animal and then hunted. It's like having, might be exaggerating here, but it might. To me, it seems like it's like having a cow in a pen, and then having dogs attack it, and then you shoot it. That's like hunting. Obviously, they went to the forest trying to find a deer, and then circle it with dogs, and then you shoot it. But still,
blame.
Oh well.
But the loyal Marshal Berthier claimed responsibility.
Okay. Fair enough.
The war against Austria in 1809 saw Masséna back near his best. His corps formed the vanguard for the crossing of the Danube and fought ferociously to hold the village of Aspern against an overwhelming Austrian onslaught.
Look at that.
Masséna was everywhere, displaying his usual coolness under fire, and when ordered to retreat, ensured his troops pulled back across the river in good order. The battle was a defeat, but Masséna had been superb.
Could have been
Together,
worse.
he and the Emperor oversaw preparations for the next attempt to cross the Danube 6 weeks later. The Austrians were waiting for them at the Battle of Wagram. Because of a riding accident a few days earlier, Masséna had to command his corps from a carriage. He made a fine target for Austrian gunners, but was still able to organize a complex redeployment of his corps at the height of the battle, covered by Marshal Bessières' cavalry charge. Masséna's bold manoeuvre secured the French left flank and won further praise from Napoleon. Masséna...
Right, because at that time it was that, oh yeah, the order was given, but then how do you execute that order? The order says something. You need to move your troops more southwest to cover our flank, right? How do you do that physically? At that point, Masséna did a good job.
Already ennobled as the Duke of Rivoli, received a new title,
Wow.
Prince of Essling, and another less welcome reward, command of French forces for the invasion of Portugal. Masséna was deeply reluctant to go and complained bitterly about his appointment. He was showing clear signs of exhaustion and was plagued by rheumatism and bad lungs. When he arrived in Spain, General Foy observed, "He's only 52, but he looks more than 60. He's lost weight and has begun to stoop. His glance, since the accident in which he lost an eye, has lost its keenness." His subordinates, already underwhelmed by his appearance, were outraged that the Marshal also decided to bring along his mistress, poorly disguised as an officer of dragoons. The French invasion of Portugal proved a disaster, undone by Wellington's scorched earth tactics, a hostile population and terrain, and Masséna's own lethargic leadership. His corps commanders, especially Marshal Ney, were scathing of his conduct. At Busaco, Masséna squandered lives with an unnecessary frontal attack on a strong British position. When he reached Lisbon, he found the city protected by new fortifications, the impregnable lines of Torres Vedras. Masséna waited outside Lisbon for reinforcements that never came, while sickness and guerrilla raids took their toll on his army. 5 months later, he recrossed the mountains back into Spain, leaving a string of devastated villages behind him. The next summer, at Fuentes de Oñoro, Masséna attacked Wellington's army once more, and despite much hard fighting, again failed to win a clear victory. He blamed Marshal Bessières for his lack of support. But the Emperor's patience was at an end. He sent Marshal Marmont to replace Masséna, and when they next met, greeted him with the cutting words, "So, Prince of Essling, you are no longer Masséna."
Wow.
Masséna's health was now in steep decline. He never held a major command again, though he was recalled in 1813 to supervise a military district in southern France. He died after a long illness in 1817. In his prime, Masséna was a superb commander, incisive and dangerous, but he was past his best by the time he became a marshal. Nevertheless, there were enough sparks of his old brilliance to worry his adversaries.
True.
The Duke of Wellington once remarked, "When Masséna was opposed to me in the field, I never slept comfortably."
Wow.
Bessières, Macdonald, Masséna. 20 down, 6 to go. Join us for the next part of Napoleon's Marshals as we reveal our top 6, coming soon.
Wow, that was amazing as always. I can actually see those 3 being over those 4 that I liked more. Yeah, because Bessières, he was a good man. Macdonald same. Masséna lost his prime at the end, but I mean almost all of them do, right? Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.